Are we ready to get started?
Yeah, how are you?
Yeah?
Good to see you.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and get rolling, shall we? Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. Really excited to be here. My name is Lisa Panapinto. I'm the Senior Vice President of Public Sector for Comcast Business. And I am thrilled to be here with this amazing panel to my left. I'm going to go ahead and introduce them quickly, and then we'll jump right in. So to my left, we have Mona Dexter, Vice President of Military and Veteran Affairs at Comcast. Then distinguished chef, celebrity entrepreneur, philanthropist, and author, Robert Irvine. We have Tim Reyna, the CIO and CTO of AFCEA International. And then Steve Salata, General Manager of Machine Q. And lastly, but not least, Sachin Patel, Vice President of Comcast Government Services. So welcome, and thank you so much for being here. So as you can tell, we have a large panel here, and we are going to try and cover a lot of ground. So we might bounce all over the place. Come along with us for the ride. It's going to be a lot of fun. So what we thought we'd do today is try and get to the intersection of technology, government, community, and industry. And that is really appropriate given AFCEA's mission and where we're sitting today. So AFCEA's commitment to building connections and collaboration between those groups seems like this is a really fitting topic. So without further ado, let's jump right in. So let's kick it off by talking a little bit about the military and specifically the work that you, Mona, Robert, and Tim do every day to support those communities. So actually, Robert, why don't I start with you? And if you could tell us a little bit about your foundation that I know means so much to you and the mission and what you hope to accomplish.
Well, I think the foundation is really why I get up every morning. I get a chance to travel the world 345 days a year. 150 of those are specifically with active duty military. So I just came back from Cuba, Israel, Normandy, Scotland, Syria, Afghanistan, and tomorrow I'll be in Hawaii at RIMPAC. So the foundation is based basically because the government have issues with fulfilling our veterans' needs. And that's why Mona and I work together very closely with my foundation and Comcast. But we have a lot of programs. There's a lot of great foundations out there. The Garrisonese, TAPS, the USO, all these kind of folks that do great work. But I wanted to do something different. Although I've worked with Garrisonese for 15 years, he builds homes and does certain things. I do more of mental and physical health, being around the force that many days a year. So when people transition, they kind of get lost. So whether you've been injured in battle, ill or injured, whether you have post-traumatic stress, we have programs that are reuniting the brave, which means putting units back together. We just put 750 1st Battalion 5th Marines back together after 20 years, and they're snipers and the Gold Star families in San Diego. I just came back bringing 168 World War II veterans back to Normandy with American Airlines, my partners, feeding them there. And then straight from there, I have to do a lunch and dinner with the President, King Charles, Prince of Wales, and 20 heads of state to Scotland to take 100 U.S. servicemen, but 1,000 wounded, ill and injured from our coalition force to do a 56-mile march. But the programs that we have, Mobius programs with wheelchairs, with bikes for double amputees, bikes that the legs sit in front of them, and then go 20 miles an hour around Colorado, making a big noise. But it's really about you hear about 22 soldiers a day committing suicide. That's actually wrong. It's almost double that. And that's the real number, but we don't tell you that. So my goal is there are 1,500 double amputees on a war on terror, 18 years, Afghanistan, Iraq. My goal is to get them all out of their rooms to stop this suicide piece with the foundation. And if you go onto Amazon.com, there's a documentary there that I produced called Hello High Seas. It's about a rescue swimmer that tried to commit suicide, didn't manage to, but He sails around Cape Horn. It's pretty amazing. Never sailed a day in his life. And last week, while we were in Scotland doing this jump, we had 500 rescue swimmers in Alabama. So it's all about connecting people and getting people out in the open doing exercise. Yesterday at the Warrior Games and Special Operations in Orlando. So that's what we do in the foundation. But I'm in the military every day. In the Pentagon yesterday with Secretary of Defense, Secretary of Navy. I'm now in the modernization force for feeding platform across that force.
Great. Well, I think that gives you a really unique perspective. And in a minute, we're going to drill into, I think, some of the observations that you may have that would benefit this audience. Moving quickly to Mona. So you're the leader of Comcast Military and Veterans Affairs. And kind of keying off what some of Robert said about how you support the community and how Comcast supports the community, maybe you can tell us a little bit about that mission.
Yeah, sure. So as a company founded by a veteran, Ralph Roberts was a Navy veteran in World War II. The military community has been part of the fabric of our company from day one. So it has always been part of our values to stay engaged with and support the military community writ large. And we do that by making sure that we are connecting with them upon entry, as well as their extended family members throughout their journey of service, and ensuring that the family has quality of life, and then post-service, determining those needs. And we're centrally focused on connectivity, digital equity, and again, especially now, making sure that they have access to the connection, but also the digital skills to thrive in today's world, because it's necessary. It's not just a nice to have or a benefit anymore, it's required. So we're thinking about that, again, across multiple generations of military community members. When we think about, from a customer perspective, we're thinking, what makes sense to them as customers? And so is it affordable? Is it something they can carry with them? We just launched an always-on military customer offer for residential and mobile services. And when we think about employees, we have to have the military community in our workforce so we can authentically serve the military customer. So we have military-affiliated teammates across the enterprise, and they are the best advisors on how we best serve the military community as customers, whether it's commercial, residential, federal, what have you. And so part of that is, again, making sure that they have that continued sense of service and that commitment to returning back to the communities, and they also have that community within the company. And so I'll pitch it to Steve. So my connection to the military community is that of a longtime active duty military spouse and now a military parent. So I have a son who's actively serving in the Army. Steve, though, is a veteran in our company, and so I want to kind of pitch it to him as one of the founding members of our veteran ERG, and talk a little bit about how we built that community and how we leverage that community, again, as advisors across the company, and to kind of be the innovators and the creators of what have become some national programs.
Thanks, Mona, and really fired up to be here today, back in the Beltway with some of my favorite people. I work in our headquarters in Philadelphia, and I can say with great pride that I love my job because I get to work at America's finest military-friendly company. We started our Veterans Network in 2011, and this young man right next to us and his team, Robert Irvine, his team led by Justin, have been with us every step of the way. And we've hired tens of thousands of vets since we started this military-friendly, veteran-focused journey. Comcast is all about people and technology. And during my time in the military, 4 years at the Naval Academy, 8 years on active duty, my Army buddy here, beat Army, we really do focus on people and technology. In my 8 years, leading high-performing teams on ships, leading engineering systems, our close-in weapons systems as a surface officer. I worked with the Marine Corps with our PRC 117 radios, calling for fire as a naval gunfire officer. I led anti-terrorism teams through naval coastal warfare in Iraq, 2 tours there, really supporting our troops on the ground there. Everything was about people and technology, and that translates so well to Comcast. Comcast is all about people and technology. 100,000 plus people strong, delivering global networks at scale, reliable networks, really innovative networks, enterprise-grade networks to 50 million plus customers globally. That's what we do. We do it well, and I think a big part of that is our commitment to the military, our commitment to service.
Oh, thanks so much, Steve. And VetNet really is a tremendous employee resource group that you don't have to be to belong, which is, I think, really important for all of us who haven't served to be able to be a part of that community. So thank you for that. Turning our attention to Tim. So, AFCEA is really committed, obviously, to learning opportunities to the military community and beyond. And I know you personally took advantage of many of those opportunities during your time as an Army Signal Warrant Officer. And now the tables have turned. You are now on the other side of the table as a CIO and CTO of AFCEA, and you're responsible for much of the technology that delivers these programs. So can you tell us a little bit about what that means, how that works, and some of the challenges you face?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Lisa. Good morning. So just to keep the energy going, I will say 8 years is cute. I did 22 and a half, okay, buddy? So, so no, but it's always good to mess with the services, and it's good camaraderie. So to tie it in with the panels, and we think about just what Robert does and what Mona and Steve are doing, how we AFCEA, what we do, and how we contribute is we're internationally, we're global as well. We have over 32,000 members that are serving and that are contribute to our membership committee. We have over 1,700 corporate sponsors that support events like this for us, right? And everybody that supports this in one way or another are contributing back to the community. How we do it is through education, webinars, conferences like this, right? And the biggest thing that we take pride in is bridging the gap between industry, academia, and DoD, right? Everybody that we have here is serving in some shape or form, and it goes to that. So for us, what we like to do is really just to contribute, and some of it may not be tangible. It's going to be all intellectual stuff that we do, certifications and knowledge sharing. That's one of our biggest things that we take pride in, is the knowledge sharing and the networking events. You look around here, we have an attendance of over 6,000 people, right? That's a huge number of what we're sold out. This is one of our flagship events. So that's one of the big things, how we tie in our veterans and me as a former veteran to be able to be here. I've been a member for almost 18 years of AFCEA, so it's just an honor to be serving at this role and this capacity.
So, well, thank you so much. And thanks for this great event, because these opportunities to connect are just absolutely fantastic. And as we kind of talk about connections, and I alluded to this earlier, so Robert, I think you have a really interesting perspective that maybe not a lot of people do, given that you travel so much and that you have these sort of entrepreneurial aspects to your portfolio.
I would ask this question. I would ask this question.
Oh, you're going to cut me off. Let's hear it.
Yeah, I'm going to cut you off for a second. Sorry, I'm rude. I didn't mean to be rude.
That's all right.
How many people know what our military does? Except you sitting down there. I can see you. Dissa, don't say a word.
Real.
How many people know what do you think the military does?
Texas.
Protect us. How many folks do you think we have in our military today as you're sitting in that chair? Active duty, total 12 months a year, 365 days a year, 12 months. 2.4 million active duty reserve and guard that are actually deployed 12 months in places that some of you don't even know exists. Some of us do, but and technology, and I have a very different view because I just sat with the Secretary of Defense and whatnot yesterday, and I sit with the chiefs on how do we bring industry partners, and that's just why this is so important, because the military, other than weapon systems, are very old. If you think of an aircraft carrier, the USS Ford being the newest, correct? It's only been out a year, not even. The JFK comes out in June, but we're still using 1940 technology below the decks, right? So feed 6,000 people, we can't feed them because the stores are at that end of the ship and the galley's in the middle. And by the way, the galley's in the middle because we have a flight deck that goes left and right. So I have a very different perspective that I'm discussing with the military right now on modernization using technology in the food service area. Because we can have planes, trains, and automobiles and whatever else. But unless we have a human being that can actually use it, any Air Force guys here? Air Force. When did you retire? Okay, since 1997, you think the Air Force has moved on? All right? So the F-35, we think that's new. It's 20 years old. What is new is the B-21 bomber, which literally is not even being unveiled yet. But I saw it a couple of weeks ago. The most hardcore plane that a human can fly, or it doesn't have to fly. It can be flown either way. So I think technology in the food space, technology in the armament space, on the warship space. We now have a Thunderbird submarine that can go anywhere with nobody on it. A ship 3 weeks ago went from Virginia to Portsmouth Harbor with 179 missiles on it, with a 19-year-old kid using a joystick from Virginia to docking in Portsmouth Harbor. So technology, unless you're with it, you'll be left way behind. And that's in the food service, which I'm talking about making eggs, right? Which sounds really simple, but it's not that simple, because that's a bigger security risk on national security than anybody saying always armaments or being a spy. If we get, and we've seen this through COVID, if we get people sick feeding them, the force is useless. Regardless, it's rendered useless. So food safety using technology, food delivery using technology is huge right now. It was a huge discussion yesterday in the Pentagon. It will be a huge discussion in Hawaii tomorrow at RIMPAC. I'll be there. So I think we need industry partners, and it's the first time really the DoD has asked for industry help, because it's been closed off for many years. So I think now is the time, if you've got solutions to problems, to put them out there.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I love the tie-in to food service, because many of us might think of technology in, perhaps applications that are more traditional, but food service is a huge one. And Steve, I know you were active in Robert's restaurant in the Pentagon from an IoT perspective. So maybe you want to talk a little bit about what you're trying to accomplish there?
Yeah, for sure. So, working for Comcast Business for Machine Q, the company that I run, we're a Comcast-owned company delivering IoT, Internet of Things solutions to enterprises across the country. And one of the biggest enterprises we worked with was Starbucks. Starbucks has had a challenge where their baristas in the past have had to spend about an hour of their day manually taking temperature readings at every fridge and freezer in every Starbucks in the U.S. Think about that. Number one, from an operational efficiency perspective, but number two, from a customer experience perspective, they're not focused on serving the customer. So we work with Starbucks to build a temperature humidity sensor, a low power temperature humidity sensor. We put it in every fridge in every Starbucks in the US and Canada. We integrated it end-to-end security encrypted from device to cloud into the Starbucks Store Manager app, saving the baristas an hour of time where they can focus on serving the customer. And we're doing the same thing. We're testing it out with Robert at his restaurant in Northern Virginia.
Which is a nightmare. And I'll tell you why, because Starbucks have access, all our stuff has to go through Fort Meade because of what it is. Phones don't work, in the Pentagon unless you go in the center. So it's kind of interesting to use that technology. We also have, which may come as a surprise to most of you, we opened a new restaurant of the future 3 weeks ago in Andrews Air Force Base, with technology, self-ordering technology. So there's only 2 people to turn $3 million in a restaurant. It's a pretty cool number, right? And it's not that we just can't find the people, just like we can't find the military folks anymore, because our birth rate in this country is the lowest it's been since 1940. So we started this thing using technology. 94% of the human beings that go to this restaurant use the self-ordering platform, instead of talking and engaging to a human being, of which they have a choice. But they choose to use the self-ordering. And what Steve's doing right now with the technology in the Pentagon and Starbucks is reinventing what could be used and saving time and revenue in business. And it works tremendously. And I've worked with Steve for, since Noah's Ark. He was on Noah's Ark. He was a captain boy on Noah's Ark.
I was an officer of the deck. On that, and just to add to that, what Robert's saying is, when you're thinking about IoT, when you're thinking about enabling data, the promise of AI, it's really about inputting these types of systems. Think Starbucks putting in temperature humidity on a secure LoRaWAN Comcast-provided network. You can add other solutions on top of that. Energy management, smart restroom technology, paper towels, toilet paper, soap. Think about how those impact the customer experience. Getting data from your ovens, your espresso machines. That's where everything is going because the labor force is finite and we need to be able to deliver for our customers, deliver for the military. These are all tools that we can offer globally.
Yeah, yeah. So, Sachin, you've been quiet down at the end. I'm going to pull you in. You're coming along for the ride here. So, we talked a little bit about IoT, a little bit about AI. What are some of the trends that you're seeing in technology? How can we help build that partnership as well between industry and the government?
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. There's a variety of different trends taking place in the government, right? And I think all of it starts with having that deep understanding of what are some of those use cases going to be. So I think the collaboration and partnership is truly important to fully understand, where technology is going, but what are the needs and the gaps that the government agencies are looking to fill, right? Some of the examples that the team here has shared, to have those insights to say, this is what we're looking to accomplish, and then gearing our technology catered for that goes a long way. Some of the general trends we're seeing, AI is huge right now, right? There's a lot of discussion around how to use AI, how are we going to enable that for the betterment of both the public and private sector, and how do we use it responsibly? What are going to be the governance and policies crafted around that technology? There's plenty of opportunity to see what we've done on the private sector and how do we use it for large enterprise customers? What are some of the best practices? Everything that we've done on the enterprise side of the house, and how can we leverage that for the betterment of the government itself? So there has to be that openness to share information and collaborate with each other. And at the same time, we want to get to that point where we can help advance technology forward together by, again, collaborating, sharing all that information. There's a big push to also do cloud migrations as workloads are moving to the cloud, moving away from on-prem solutions. And how can we enable that as well? Because a lot of the use cases require processing a lot of information. You have to store that information. How can we weave in technologies like an SD-WAN, for example, right, to make that transition and transaction more, perform better, where we can, sort of have the best path, fastest path to get users to those data centers for all the applications that they're moving to the cloud. There's also been a big push in the government to go to co-location services. So as we're thinking about private cloud and the security constraints that we have around that, what else can we be doing to, help push? There was a directive that Congress gave towards the tail end of last year about using commercial data center services in lieu of just government, private cloud instances and private data centers. So what can we do to help move the needle to leverage commercial technologies better and work together, again, collaboratively to use the best options we have available from the enterprise side of the house?
Yeah, well said. And, really, I think, Robert, you mentioned it, but to put a finer point on it, maybe Mona, so the human being is at the center of all of this interaction with technology. And so there is that opportunity for public-private partnership, especially when it comes to skill sets and expertise. So maybe can you talk to a little bit about how we can build those partnerships?
Sure. So I'd add to public-private partnerships, nonprofits as well. So, our team works very closely with Department of Defense on quality of life issues for the military community. So we're thinking about, why we're asking the Department of Defense, why do you think you're having recruiting challenges? What are the quality of life issues related to the families that we can help support? Is it, can we improve connectivity again? And that's where some of the terms of our offers are coming from. But then also thinking about the Department of Defense's critical infrastructure plan and how that is also a driver of quality of life and making sure that the families have appropriate connectivity, again, to stay in touch before moves, after moves, keeping kids connected, keeping parents connected when they're deployed. So the nonprofit piece is very important there because that's often a liaison, that's often the bridge between industry and the public sector. So for example, when we're thinking about skill sets and bringing more veterans and military spouses into our enterprise across brands, we're working with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation's Hiring Our Heroes program for employment, for recruitment, but we're also asking our folks, are you seeing any skills gaps there that we can bring back to the nonprofit from the workforce space or from the employment training space? Our foundation is heavily invested in a program called NPower as part of our Project Up opportunity to really upskill the workforce of tomorrow for digital skills, and they have cohorts of just veterans who are being trained for technology roles in the private sector. And so we, not only do we support that program, we hire from that program, but we're also able to consult and say, look, we've hired folks for these particular areas, but we would love if you added this to your curriculum, again, to bridge that gap. Also working with the Department of Veterans Affairs. We actually just participated in their Immersive Healthcare Summit a couple of weeks ago, where they are implementing the use of VR technology for treatment and therapies for veterans. And so, again, we have a lot of different departments across the company, and our accessibility product development team is now working hand in hand with the VA to talk about how do we continue to develop products from a technology standpoint for not just treatment and therapy, but delivery of treatment for veterans, and thinking about how we just expand that access. So again, it's really making sure that we are asking the public sector, what are the problems that you're looking to solve, and how can we support that, versus thinking we know what the problems are and coming forward with solutions that we think are correct. So it's really being a partner versus a delegate, but also making sure that we have nonprofit partners to help serve as liaisons.
Yeah, and perfect lead-in, Robert. Nonprofit foundation, you've had a
Look,
partnership
before I
with
get there,
Profits Forever.
I love both what Mona and Sachin said. Look, we only know the problems that the military and outside businesses face if you sit down. And what we tend to do as companies, and it drives me nuts, is we go in with a solution that's useless to the people that actually need the solution. We got to sit down with a cup of coffee and listen to what the problems are, then go back to the team and fix, or at least show a solution. I do it every week on a TV show. It drives me nuts. Where we think we know the problems, but we really don't understand the depth of the problems, especially in the military standpoint, where Tim comes from, the communications. Because there are things in the military that some of you know, sitting here, that I know, that are very sensitive stuff. And there is no one fix for that. It takes a bunch of people, like-minded people, to sit in a room and like a Rubik's Cube, change it to fit what is needed. But that only lasts probably for a year or 2 years, then something else changes. China, Asia, you name it. Our adversaries right now are doing the same thing that we're doing, trying to do the same thing, and we're trying to outsmart them. It's the same from the Cold War. And I laugh because food, we don't think about that as security, but it actually is a huge part of security. If we have a fighting force in the Red Sea like we do right now, an aircraft carrier carries 4 months of food for 6,000 people. Then what? So we have a fleet auxiliary that refills it for a couple of weeks. Then what? So if it's a sustained interaction or standoff, how do we feed them? That's my worry. That's how I think of national security. But then DIS is sitting over there, bless them, doing all what they do, and trying to figure out what they have to do to keep the country safe. So think about the Cold War. And this is where we are almost right now. We're going back to the spying, or, Hawaii, the spy on top of the hill watching the fleet coming out. And I think technology is changing that. But also in our world of the foundations, right? We need partners to help us. Mona's talking about quality of life. That's the top of the chain right now with the Secretary of Defense, is how do we take care of our people we have in, our veterans, because those are the people that are saying, oh, you know what? If I'm Mona's son, you're not old enough to be my mom, but if I'm Mona's son and she was in the Air Force and she's saying to me, oh, you're not joining the Air Force, they didn't take care of me, then in 2 years we'll have a draft, whether we like it or not. It won't be deployable, but we'll have a draft. We had it in England during the war. So we have to make sure that we can give the quality of life both in and out. And one thing that Comcast is, and I'll tell you right now, they won't, I can. I've worked with them for 13 years. The reason I continue to work with Comcast, not only because they're cutting edge in technology, but they're always a business with a conscience. VetNet, and I've been all around VetNet since we started this a long time ago, but taking care of the military spouses, that means, you know, are they getting food? 1 in 4 of our active duty men and women are food insecure. How can that be in the United States military? It's true. So how do we feed these people that are making $36,000 a year to serve our country? They're not making it for money, but we still got to feed them and take care of their families. So what Mona and Comcast are doing is the same as what I'm doing on the other side of recruitment is, okay, we've got to bump up the money that we pay these servicemen and women. We've got to give them good housing. We've got to make sure they can afford to pay their kids. And by the way, when they do come out, that they have the necessary skills to transition and then go into a company that cares like Comcast. So for me, that's what Comcast does. It's not just a technology company, although it is. It's what it does outside of the technology to then bring in it's almost like the brain drain in the 70s, right? From when the United States wanted all these whiz kids and they brought them in and give them all green cards. Well, that's what Comcast is doing, giving you the opportunity to excel from when you were active duty into a space that, look, nobody's going to teach a CW4 life. He's been there. He's a unicorn, as they say, right? Apparition. There's not many of them, or CW5s. But when they come out, they're lost. So what do? They know 30 years in the military, this is a dog-eat-dog world, and that's what Comcast is changing. Bringing people, not only the technology people, but also the spouses and the families. So that helps me when I go and sit in front of young airmen. I was at MEPS in Brooklyn last year. Many of you don't know what that is. It's a recruitment center where you walk in, get your hair cut, do your doctor, and you're on a train, plane, or whatnot to your base right after it. It's pretty interesting to see. There's a lot of people out there that want to join the military, but are being held back by the parents because all we hear in the press is, you know, oh, you've been in war 18 years. They didn't take care of me when I blew my leg off. They didn't do, you know. So, you know, our job in the foundation side, but also in the company side, is to make sure that these young folks know that it's a great way to go. And they're at the driving edge of technology, no matter whether they're cooking, whether they're sailing a ship or driving a warship, flying off a plane. And I just finished saying over by the booth, what other Fortune 500 company would let a young 18-year-old kid, male or female, on a warship or aircraft carrier, send off a $200 million jet? You wouldn't. There's no Fortune 500 company that does that. But they can't drink beer, but we allow them to do that. So technology, these young kids, right? These are babysitters, sitters, they're cameras, they're communicators. You know, it's amazing what technology is doing in the foundation space and in the world space.
Yeah. Well, and staying on that partnership question, Tim. So AFCEA has been in the building partnership business for a very long time. I'm curious if you've seen the needs change for those partnerships and kind of where you see those going in the future.
Yeah, no, thank you. I want to maybe just go back a little bit with
please.
what Robert was saying, and I just want to say that the foundations that they have and the corporations like Comcast, it helps transitioning soldiers get over the fear of transitioning, right? Because it helps us. I experienced it about 2 years ago, and there was a lot of unknowns. Even though we've accomplished a lot in uniform, coming across was a challenge. So what I want to do is I want to be an advocate for my fellow veterans and active duty personnel that are coming out and share the experiences. So if there's anything I can do to help, I want to help.
Signed up.
No, so back to what I said earlier. What we do and how we come together is fostering communications across. We have 3 targeted areas of audience that we look at. We look at DoD, we look at academia, and we look at industry, right? And you know, Robert was talking about the complex problems that we face. How do we stop admiring the problem and fix it, right? Because we can always say we want to do X, But what does that really mean? As a former technician, we were faced with a lot of complicated systems of systems that provided communications for 3-4-star generals, COCOMs. And it was challenging. So what we want to do is just be able to open the lines of communication, especially starting from academia. That's important because what are they teaching our future soldiers, airmen, and Marines, right? What are they teaching them? And how can we help foster that communication with them within DoD? Because they can come out with a mindset of knowing, here's a problem that we might face. Here's a challenge that we might face. And then now you're in industry, how can we solve that problem? So when you look at that trifecta, that's what we want to look at, and that's what we want to continue doing globally, not just in the United States. As you know, we're a global agency and organization. That's a big thing for us. And just like anything else, I know, Robert, you mentioned about, the Cold War era. I know that a lot of things within our military, we still have a lot of those capabilities, but the threat and the landscape is evolving daily. Today, General Skinner showed a PowerPoint presentation that was in English and was converted to Chinese, right? And so people have access to our data. They have access to our strategy. They have access to our intellectual property that we have. So how do we protect that? He's talking about food services. A lot of us don't think about supply chain. How does that affect us, and how do we do it? So if there's technologies out there that we could help inform and educate our people, come out with those things, and we're happy to host them for you.
Yeah. Well, and the speed of innovation, I don't think anyone in this room would disagree, has so dramatically changed and increased. And it's almost like we have to get out our crystal ball and think, what's next? And I don't think any of us have a crystal ball, but I'm curious, and maybe I'll go down the row after this, but Sachin, as you think about innovation and where things might be headed, anything getting you really excited, maybe even in the cybersecurity space or elsewhere?
Yeah, so in the realm of cybersecurity, right, we're not at a point where if there's any type of attack and what do we need to keep safe, it's when there's an attack and are we ready for it or not. So to some of the other points here where security has to be paramount for everything that we're doing, and thinking through that, it's a matter of, again, how do we share information as far as what we're seeing in the industry, what are some of the attacks that we've seen, what are some of the use cases, what's the government seeing, what are the types of data that we want to try to keep safe, and work together to leverage some of the technologies, again, going back to AI again, right, that the attackers are using state-of-the-art technology to craft new attacks. We have to keep with the pace of change and be able to be ready and ensure that we have a strong defense in front of us and continue to evolve how we do things. So we can't be stuck in our ways as far as this is how we've done it. We use traditional firewall. There's going to be new attacks on a daily basis. How do we work together to, again, see all of the data that's available on the internet? There's a lot of data that traverses enterprise networks. There's a lot of data that traverses government networks. And what can we partner together on to look through it, again, on that macro level to say, can we work better together and strengthen our security posture holistically to keep the government safe?
Yep. So I'll just go down the row. Steve, anything from a technology standpoint that's got you excited for the future?
Well, everything has me excited, especially this panel, especially Robert Irvine. But no, I think, it really is about using things like IoT, Internet of Things, using AI to drive more efficient restaurants, more efficient hotels. We do a lot of work with Machine Q, my company, with pharmaceutical labs, the top 10 players. We're providing tools that make their labs more efficient. Not only sensor technology, but computer vision. And that could easily translate to making your base more efficient, your aircraft carrier. So there's definitely a lot that's coming. AI is not going to solve the world, but it can certainly drive efficiency and improve the customer experience or improve operations in the military.
Yeah. Yeah.
Same question?
Love it,
I
yeah.
love it. I love it. No, so I will say what makes me really happy and excited is just the future, because when you look around us and you look around all these personnel that are around us and just the technology, when you get to walk around the floor, it's exciting that our children are going to be behind there and doing that. So seeing the innovation that has transpired in my 22 and a half years of being in industry now, that's what excites me. And just that we have so many people that want to contribute to innovation. They do. And we just got to find a way, how do we all come together to solve the complex problems that we've taken on?
Yeah. Great.
I think you're exactly right. You see all these banners in here, they're all separate companies, right? But when you put them separate companies together to create solutions, it's amazing what can happen. I'll give you a brief story about breaches. Because I work in a certain area in a big house in Washington, D.C., that has an address you all know, I had them do a deep dive on me, their intel service. They found 224 breaches of security on the dark web. Social security numbers, passwords, you name it. And I'm not kidding, this was last week. And I deal with the seal of the United States of America. It's amazing what information you think you've protected that you don't protect, that is out for sale on the dark web. I was actually blown away by it. But they have to change that. They monitor that, all those kind of things. But I think security in general, especially as we have such a diverse force and platform, meaning the areas which we police today, because let's face it, if we have some altercation with another country somewhere, this country suffers in many different ways. And the supply chain is the biggest. It's considered, based on the chip world from China, it would take us 10 years in the United States to get up to par if we had to cut off service for chips from China. 10 years. So they're already ahead of that game in that way, although we have mines being done in this country, some in Houston and somewhere else. But, the more collective and more partnerships that we form to hit those solutions, the better it is for everybody. It's rather have 10% of a piece than 0 of a piece. And these pieces are big numbers. So I would suggest you meet and greet and change cards and keep in touch. I know this guy is on the road all the time doing some amazing things because I follow what he does, not only with me, but with other folks. Technology is not going away. The younger generation loves it. Older generation, mine, not so much. We don't like it. But you can go to Walmart. So Walmart has just done something really interesting. So they were the first ones to put self-checkouts, believe it or not. They have now taken half of the self-checkouts out because they want a human being my age. But 94% of their checkouts are used by anywhere from 18 to 34-year-olds. Then it stops, which is interesting because early years we didn't have these. Now the youngsters do. So everything is done on these. So this is a great way to collect any information about you. So be careful what you put on it.
Words of wisdom for sure. Mona, how about for you?
All right, I'll try to bring this home, but I'll pull the thread of the partnerships. So we're stronger together, right? We're better together. As my team is having conversations with various entities in DoD about how do we keep people connected. Again, connectivity is key. They can retain young service members if they can stay connected to their family and friends back home. Even more senior service members are staying connected to their children back home through gaming by playing Minecraft with their children when they're abroad. To Robert's point, we have folks deployed in places around the world that we're not even thinking of because it's not top of the news headlines right now, but they're in a lot of remote places. And I was visiting a Navy carrier in Norfolk a couple months ago, and the USO installed a gaming center, and the captain of that carrier looked at me and he said, "Do you have satellite capability for connectivity?" And I said, "Not at the moment, but Comcast Business just partnered with Starlink to be able to provide satellite capability." So who knows what conversations will be opened up or what opportunities will be opened up because of partnership. So that I think is very exciting as we continue to hear straight from DoD again and VA, what are the problems you're trying to solve? How can we also, make sure that you're safe, secure, and connected, most importantly. So.
Great. Thank you for bringing that all together. We do have a few minutes for questions if there are any. Yeah. All right. Let's hear it.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
So my question is about automation. You guys talked about it a ton in technology. So with the automation of things, whether it's a register or an app or whatever, Can you speak to, I guess the community is kind of concerned with, oh, you're eliminating jobs for people, you're just trying to save money, but in actuality, all that data has to go somewhere, right? Can you speak to how, like, your cost still kind of doesn't necessarily go down because of automation? Can any of you kind of speak to that? Or all the things that have to happen, the data has to be stored somewhere?
Yeah, maybe. Okay, I know I'm moderating, but I'm going to take a stab at answering that question. So
Sure.
if I can.
You are a longtime pro at this stuff. You got
Well,
it.
I may have been here since dirt. Yeah. So I think you hit on a really interesting point. I think it does eliminate some positions for sure. It changes the work. And much of it becomes, how do you take all of this data and create something meaningful? How do you connect all of those disparate data points to be used by something like AI? But I think, the hope, certainly that we in industry have, is that that kind of automation allows us to be so much more efficient that we can increase output, right? I mean, at the end of the day, we want to grow more. That's what industry wants, right? We want to grow. And so if we can use automation to change our cost structure so that we can grow more, that's, I think, really what we're after, at least from my perspective. But I'll open it up to the panel.
I would disagree with that on the small piece.
Okay.
Okay, simply because I have to.
Please.
Because I don't see that. So I own a company, a technology company, robotics company, AI company. The robotics company, a guy that makes French fries and fries them every day for $27 an hour. I don't need that guy doing that. I have a machine that can do that. Same with Chipotle. You know this, right? Chippy and Flippy, one that flips hamburgers. Why am I paying somebody to do that? And they call out. A machine doesn't call out. It's $3,000 a month. Saves me money. But what I can do is not eliminate, because that's what the fear of this is. Oh, robots are taking over the world. No. If I can retrain you and move you to a better part and give you more money, that's my goal. And we've done that in the last 9 months in major companies by taking the mundane tasks that we can't find people to do the dishes, by the way, or whatever. Now we can have a machine that can do kitchen dishes. I don't need a human to do that. I can take that human being, retrain them to do something that I'm getting my money's worth, but also, instead of you making $16 an hour, you're now making $27 an hour to do a better job. And by the way, you're not fed up washing dishes anymore or making French fries anymore. So I think there are some positions that you would eliminate. In our world, we move the people and pay them more money. So it's not, and I know there's a big fear out there in industry. I've been on the last 3 weeks on a tear on this. People think, oh, we're putting a machine in, or we're putting self-ordering tablets in, just like you have at the airports, and it eliminates people. It actually doesn't, and we've proven that. You'll go home happy making $70,000 a year instead of 40.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like I talked about earlier about, food compliance and taking manual temperature readings, cleaning bathrooms when they don't need to be cleaned, trash removal. It's all about automating the mundane tasks so your employees can focus more on customer experience in industry.
Yeah, and I just want to add, because I think it's important. Just recently, about 2 weeks ago, the Pope actually even talked about AI, right? And his concern was the intimacy with people, right? I'm paraphrasing, right? Just how the human value of a person, right? But I just like everything else that we've talked about, that's a challenge in messaging. How are we going to keep our personnel that they're value added, that they're part of the team, and that we're not going to have a robot replacing them. But when you look at the labor categories and just labor of what they're doing, that I think that's the positive in it. We want to, not the, like Robert's saying, so we want to find the value in, you're not just a dishwasher anymore. Let's invest in you, your intellectual property that you know that you have, and what you can, because I think we need to challenge each other, because a lot of folks, we get stuck in a box. I'm here, I'm making $20 an hour, this is the height of my life. So the challenge, Robert, that I think that we need to do as technicians and just technical folks is, how do we get our people to trust us? Culture, organizational change. How do we have them adopt us in what we're doing? So I just want just to add that a little bit.
But it's no different. I'm going to jump on that. It's no different to the military, right? We take a kid off the street from Alabama, Kentucky, England, wherever it is. They don't know anything. They left school. They decide to join the military. We cut their hair, right? The first week, we cut their hair, give them kit, and make them walk or march. It's called the first 100 feet. In 10 weeks later, we have a fully fledged, capable soldier. We're investing money into them. They've got the basics for 10 weeks. Then they go to their specific MOS training. What do they want to be? Computer expert, whatever. And we invest in them. And you know why our military is so successful? It's not because we have generals and captains and admirals. It's because we have an NCO corps, non-commissioned officer corps, in the middle, sergeants and those guys, first sergeants, that are 23, 24, 25 years old that are making decisions worth millions of dollars. And that's what we've got to do with the industry. We've got to put money into the people to make them feel good about themselves, to be able to make money, have fun, and be able to take care of their family. And I think that's what AI is doing, robotics are doing, and technology is doing that. But we've got to then tell you that we're going to do that and then follow through and do it. And the problem is, there are companies out there that are not doing that. And that's why the technology gets the bad rap. Oh, we're losing 15 people. This week, five major chains of food service, hospitality, have closed, right? Because they're not willing to adapt their systems to allow it, which to me is just ridiculous. If I get on the phone with a CEO, watch out. Because they're tunnel visioned into revenue instead of people, which in turn will provide profit. And I'll tell you who does it well, just to finish off. Look at Yum Brands, 54,000 restaurants around the globe using AI and technology. Their first quarter was $55 billion. That will give you an idea.
It's a great point.
Thank you
you
for
so
the
much for the
Thank
question.
you.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Oh, we have one.
Hi, I'm Michael. I'm an engineer, and you talk about frustration and fulfillment, the human element. One of the hardest parts when we talk about any type of technology is the receiver understanding it's a balance of what is new and flashy and what is maintained and rudimentary. And normally having both be strategic initiatives is hard because you're relying upon the audience that owns the mission, that owns the money. Any recommendations that you have from your experience on saying it's fundamentally to be able to have Minecraft or be able to have a meal, but that person that you're talking to doesn't necessarily understand, or that's not necessarily their mission. Their mission is the new, not necessarily solving the old.
Anybody want to jump in?
So I'd say for that, you have to kind of look at what are the problems in front of you that you need to solve for, but there's a lot of attraction towards the new and shiny objects, right? So you have to sort of balance the two to say, how can you leverage the new to position those things to help solve the old? So it's putting it all together, right? Blending that approach to say, here are all the new things you're working on, here are the legacy challenges and issues, but if you can't get past those legacy challenges and issues, you're not going to have the pathway for enablement of those newer technologies. Mm-hmm. So it's finding the right use cases to use the new stuff.
I think being really thoughtful about your technology selection as well. We call it closet creep in these IT closets. They get these single point solutions, a point solution for Wi-Fi, a point solution for this, a point solution for that. And it starts becoming so complicated, and it's trying to figure out who are those rep providers, provide that single pane of glass, provide integrated solutions that kind of grow with you, so you're not littered with all these solutions that you try for a while and they die. So it's just being really thoughtful about your roadmap and the type of technology you implement.
And I just want to add too about just the overall processes and how we do things, because I think that if you look at the process, when you look at the agile and like waterfalls, I think you got to look at DevSecOps, continuous iterations, continuous feedback. So when you have somebody coming in and they don't understand something, you open those chains and communication channels so that they can constantly give you that feedback, and we constantly iterate. We can't start and stop a process and wait to iterate it. Like the Navy does with big ships, So, the Army's becoming very agile. We're looking at things, and I think and we need to get in that mindset because a lot of folks don't think that way. They think waterfall, start and end. But as we got to get continuous feedback of what people are doing. Yeah.
I think what's really great is COVID. I don't mean COVID was great, but what COVID did for technology is jumpstart it, right? Because we had to make decisions that we never would have done in the restaurant or hospitality business or even in business, right? Now you can't see anybody, now you can't touch anybody. Now Zoom was created and this was created. And I think that helped the technology jump tremendously. Again, I go back to what you just said. For me, when I sit down with somebody, I need to know what their problems are and what their vision was when they started. And that's over a cup of coffee or 10 cups of coffee. And then I can understand your view of your restaurant or your fuel stop or your winery or whatever it is. It doesn't matter because business is the same no matter what it is. Comcast has put technology in racetracks and NASCAR tracks, in vineyards, in places that you would never think that technology works. But every bottle of wine that you drink from California, we have a hand in. We touch it, right? Because technology says when to water, when the ground is dry, when it's not dry, whatever we need to pick. So I think depending on what your business is, Dover Fueling Solutions, you don't know who they are, some of you may. The largest purveyor of gas pumps and electric plug-ins in the world. Every 8 years, we have to change them, right? Look at their technology that's just changed. I know because we put it in there. So eventually, I'm sitting down with, I don't know what your name, I can't read that far, but what's your name? Michael?
Sometimes called the wolf.
If we sat down and have a cup of coffee and you said to me, these are my problems, okay. Then I'd bring in Steve or Tim or Mona or to listen, to give you a series, and then we may not be able to have to bring John into this. And by the way, that's how I work, because we don't all know everything about everything. We do certain things really well, so does John. So maybe John's the pivotal point there to make it work with our piece, and I think look, it's going to change and it's going to continue to change. We've just got to stay on top of it. And I've also got to know what your next 5 years in your head looks like, because if I don't deliver, we've all been sold a bill of goods. Oh, you should have this in your business because, and then 2 weeks later it's useless. Mm-hmm. So I think it's ever evolving and ever changing.
Well, thank you so much for the question, and that brings us right to time. So I would like to thank this panel so much. This was great, and thank you all for joining us. And a round of applause for the panel, please.